The man, the myth, the legend, the visionary, William Blake. Here we have a selection of his poems. There are a few things that we have to get out of the way because William Blake was just so different, so exceptional. When you read about him, you are struck with awe and admiration. First of all, William Blake was high on life. He did not need any supplements. He did not need any assistance whatsoever of the psychedelic nature. He was high on life and he was tripping balls every day. And that's something special. Then, another extraordinary thing is that he died singing. And you don't hear about this. How many people do you know that went out singing, right? William Blake died on his bed singing, right? He was just different, right? Of course, his life wasn't the best. He wasn't born in wealth or influence, or affluence, I should say. Right? He was of the working class. He always struggled. He never had enough money, etc., etc. He was attacked constantly by his peers. He was betrayed by his friends. A popular magazine, I think, called The Examiner, just mocked him openly, called him a hopeless lunatic, right? He failed, he had an art exhibition and it was a total failure, a flop. And then he became an exile for a couple of years because the political atmosphere wasn't pro, freedom and art and so and such. But all the while, even during all of this poverty and hostility, during all of this derision, William Blake kept on going, kept on making his art, writing his poetry, doing his engravings, right? And of course, I have to repeat myself, all the while tripping balls on life. This dude saw angels and shit, fairies, No psychedelics necessary, allegedly. What I like about him, when you read this book, these poems, and even some of his letters, is that he was against established authority, against the establishment. He didn't want any of this bullshit, right? Which vibes with me. Perfect. Probably one of the most religious or spiritual people ever, but he was completely against, organized religion, completely against the priesthood, and, it shows that he was, an enlightened individual, right? It is my belief that anything that has to do with organized whatever, when a lot of people get together, that is a perfect recipe for disaster, be it politics or religion or whatever, right? And William Blake knew this perfectly. He saw through the bullshit. He saw that governments were nothing but tyrannies and filled with despotism, and which strive to suppress, inhibit, repress individual freedoms, etc. William Blake was not about this bullshit, right? And he said it openly, which is respectable And of course, when it comes to religion, I just love reading about how he just calls priests, pretending to be philanthropic and beneficial to society and such, basically calling them a bunch of phonies, right? Beautiful, and he had certain ideas, certain beliefs that I guess were considered, heretical, against the status quo, against the norm. One of his most powerful quotes is, he simply says, all life is holy, period. Exclamation mark, right? All life is holy, right? And of course, I guess the clergy, the priesthood, wasn't vibing with this statement because, of course, a lot of priesthoods and religions have this belief that no, actually only certain types of life are holy, etc. So he was basically a blasphemer, an infidel, right? So overall, I guess you could say that above all else, overall, William Blake was a free thinker, and he wasn't the type of person that would get swept by, a trend, a hype, and he certainly wasn't going to be bamboozled or manipulated by, groupthink, the hive mind, the current popular, theory or hypothesis. You could say that his type of thinking, his mindset, his outlook, they were truly that of the individual. And like I always say, one of the most important things in life for a person is to think for yourself. Okay? Is to think for yourself, to question things, to come up with your own ideas. And most importantly, to question everything. Why is this like this? Why do I have to do this? Why is this that way? Right? William Blake was all about that. And what I love about him is, like, he was such a, I don't know if you can call him a rebel or an anarchist, but somewhere along the line he decided to create his own mythology because he wasn't satisfied with the current ones. So you have all sorts of poems with characters he invested, primordial, elemental beings and such, purely, mythological, symbolical, allegorical, right? But there are a few poems in this book that are extremely important to me. I cherish them, right? They've always stuck to me. Of course, one of them being his iconic The Tiger, which is so short, and yet it gets to the point in a couple of lines, and by the end of it, you're just awestruck. And you realize that there's something in this poem that kind of goes above your head. What is he really trying to say, right? So this is the tiger. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night. What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand there seized the fire? And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when the heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? What the hammer what the chain? In what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil? What dread grasp? There its deadly terrors clasp. When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye there frame thy fearful symmetry? And it's this short poem is just magical. You know, you are automatically swept into the scene, the environment, the surroundings, and you are immersed in the forest where the tiger lies, right? And I guess the one that really catches my attention, the line that really, I guess it's a bit confusing, perplexing, when he says, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? And I guess Blake here is referring possibly to the creator, to God. And of course, we have a dichotomy here because, of course, the lamb and the tiger are complete contrasts, opposites, right? The lamb being innocent, and I guess the tiger being almost, this ferocious evil in a way. So I guess the question is, did God make the lamb, the innocent creature, as well as the tiger, the so-called evil, ferocious creature, right? And for what purpose, right? I guess this is a almost philosophical question in a way, because, of course, the tiger would usually eat the lamb, right? So we have here the idea that God created both good and evil, and if we're reading between the lines, it seems that evil, the tiger, is winning, and the lamb, the innocent, the good, is always eaten by the evil, by the tiger. Another short one, favorite of mine, is, of course, a poison tree. I was angry with my friend. I told my wrath did end. I was angry with my foe. I told it not, my wrath did grow. And I watered it in fears, night and morning with my tears. And I sunned it with smiles, and with soft, deceitful wiles. And it grew both day and night, till it bore an apple bright. And my foe beheld it shine, and he knew that it was mine. And into my garden stole, when the night had veiled the pole. In the morning glad I see my foe outstretched beneath the tree. So this one is straightforward, and it's beautiful in its simplicity. There's a lot of truth in the poison tree, right? I was angry with my friend. I told my wrath did end. So if you confess, maybe your negative emotions and feelings to your friends, it might end up well, it might be successful, and your anger will dissipate. But then he says, I was angry with my foe. I told it not, my wrath did grow. And yet, here we have a serious truth bomb, because we all have foes or perceived enemies, and, they anger us, and we do not confess this. For years, we sit and we let our frustration and our antagonism, boil. And it, because it is not confessed, it sits in us like a beast, and it fattens up nicely, this wrath that we do not confess of having for our enemies, right? So this tree, watered with wrath for a foe, it is never confessed, and so the tree grows large, and it bears fruit that is also poisoned, which in the end, of course, the metaphor here, I guess, is that, this wrath that multiplies and amplifies, by the end, it will vanquish your foes. And, plainly said, I guess, that, if you keep this anger for people inside of you for such a long period of time, at the end you might commit a heinous crime, right? Basically killing your enemies. And it shows here in these last lines where he says, "In the morning glad I see my foe outstretched beneath the tree," because the foe went and feasted on the poisoned fruit from the poisoned tree, poisoned with wrath, and the wrath finally killed the foe. And as we see, the person here is glad to see this, that the foe has been killed. But very simplistic in a way, but it tells a lot of truth. And here we have auguries of innocence. And, the first beginning lines, the first few lines are superb. So iconic. To see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wild flower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. Right? I mean, this is on another level. It might seem quite plain and bland and simplistic, but it's just out of this world amazing. Right? To see a world in a grain of sand, here we have again his obsession with perception, for your perception, your horizon to be, fully evolved. So you can see the beauty in every little thing, because there is a world in anything, no matter how small, right? To see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wild flower. Yet again, nature can contain just, such beauty, such even intricacy, the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio, etc. Right? Yet again, to have that matured perception and perspective on things, to see all the beauty that there is. But of course, most people, they cannot focus on the little things. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. Right? So yet again, we have his manic obsession with eternity and infinity, right? Hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour, right? Which is, I guess, that every moment it should be special. Every moment should be cherished, because you never know when it can all go downhill. You can never know when it will all fall to pieces. You never know when you may perish. It could happen in any second, right? So I guess the best way to live is to just be, content in the present moment. In every moment, just assume that it is heaven, that it is eternity, right? And be glad for what you have. Be glad for all the good things that happen to you. Oh, they are all blessings, right? But when it comes to auguries of innocence, something really puzzled me, because Blake goes on and on about, there are lines upon lines of him just mentioning these, let's call them cruelties or crimes against nature, crimes against animals in particular. For example, a robin redbreast in a cage puts all heaven in a rage. A dove house filled with doves and pigeons shudders hell through all its regions. A dog starved at his master's gate predicts the ruin of the state. A horse misused upon the road calls to heaven for human blood. Each outcry of the hunted hare, a fiber from the brain does tear. And he goes on and on about this, mentioning animal after animal and how specifically how human beings abuse and maltreat all of these animals, hunt them, cage them, starve them, etc. He goes on and on, page after page. And, when I first checked out Allegories of Innocence, I didn't get why he kept on rambling about all of these animals being abused by people, right? And, every time he mentions this animal gets abused, heaven weeps, the state crumbles, the family implodes, you will be cursed, apocalypse will rain down upon you, fire and brimstone. And he kind of subtly insinuates that this is what we do here as a species, humanity. I've always said this. There's something extremely different about the human species. Unlike all or most other creatures, we don't belong here. We don't fit here. There's something wrong with us. Every other creature finds a way to live in balance and harmony with the surrounding, right? With these surroundings. You take what you need and maybe you offer something beneficial in return to nature. This is what all species, all creatures do, but not human beings. Human beings, of course, back in the day when, at the dawn of the tribes, I guess the tribes back in the day lived somewhat in harmony, but after that, what we do is we go to a region, we completely devastate it of its resources, we take everything, we abuse everything, we don't give anything back, and then we move on to another region to rinse and repeat, right? This is, kind of the description of a disease, of a virus, of a cancer. So it's extremely telling what Blake does here with all of these examples, all of these abused creatures, again and again, page after page, line after line. It's not natural, right? No other creature goes to such an extent like human beings to just devastate everything. And there's such self-entitlement, person sees a little river, well, we're gonna divert it for crops. We see a tree, it's in my way, I'm gonna cut it. And I need firewood and furniture. Oh, you see that fox? I need a fucking coat. You see all of those fish? Well, I need to eat, so I'm gonna fish them all, etc., etc. There's this, almost juvenile self-entitlement. This superiority complex to assume that just because you're a bit more conscious, you have the right to basically exterminate everything else, right? So Blake does an amazing job with this. But, of course, now, I guess this will be the cherry on top. These are probably his most famous lines, or one of his most famous lines. And, they just haunt you. They are found at the end of Allegories of Innocence. And before I read them to you, I don't usually make these recommendations, but I do suggest, if you haven't seen it, to watch the movie Dead Man, starring Johnny Depp, because it is amazing. And there's a lot of William Blake sprinkled throughout, which makes it just so much better, right? But here we are. Every night and every morn, some to misery are born. Every morn and every night, some are born to sweet delight. Some are born to sweet delight. Some are born to endless night. We are led to believe a lie when we see not through the eye, which was born in a night to perish in a night. When the soul slept in beams of light, God appears and God is light to those poor souls who dwell in night. But does a human form display to those who dwell in realms of day? Right? Absolutely. I mean, this is all you need in life. Okay, these few lines. Listen, I hope I'm not being too presumptuous or arrogant, but these few lines offer more education, more enlightenment, more epiphanies than 12 years in the school system, right? It just gives you the truth. You know, it's a sad truth, but it is a truth nonetheless, and it can be a lesson if you have the mind, to understand it and the ears to listen, right? This is pure life. This is a pure life lesson, right? Every night and every morn, some to misery are born. Every morn and every night, some are born to sweet delight. Some are born to sweet delight. Some are born to endless light. To endless night, pardon me, right? So here we have just this soul-crushing truth drop. I guess you can call it the randomness of the universe, right? Because, it's basically happenstance or causality, whatever you want to call it, but it's an undeniable truth that some people, for whatever reason, with no, without having earned it, they are born in wealth, they prosper, they succeed, they have all of the opportunities and advantages in the world, and they haven't earned it. They haven't worked for it, right? It's so random, but it happens every day. People are just born into wealth and power, and they never have to work a day in their life, and all of their life is, amazing. All of their life is a party, and yet, at the same time, some are born to endless night. Also random, also unearned, undeserving. A lot of people are born in misery, in pain, in suffering, being downtrodden, being angry all the time, ill, lonely, etc., etc. All random, unearned, undeserved. A lot of people are born in just a shitty life, right? And it's just so, you can't really explain why this is. It just happens. And Blake captures it so magnificently, right? Some are born to sweet delights. Some are born to endless night. That's all you need. That's the only lesson you need in life. It is what it is. You have to take it and you have to move on. Or you don't. But it cannot be erased. Okay? Some are born to all of the riches of the world, and others, equally so, are born to just the worst possible outcome imaginable. And there is no real explanation. Shit just happens. Shit just happens, right? And I guess these are the most just mysterious, puzzling lines that I don't think I have truly, I don't think I have explain them truly, but he says, God appears and God is light to those poor souls who dwell in night. But does a human form display to those who dwell in realms of day? Now, this is just so, it's like 5D chess. Okay, so let's try to analyze this. So, God appears and God is light to those poor souls who dwell in night. So, to the downtrodden, to the miserable, to those in suffering, to those in pain, to those who dwell in the night, God appears to these downtrodden people, and God is light. Maybe because, in a sense, all of these desperate people need something to rely on, and then God automatically appears, because otherwise, I guess they would lose their minds. I guess this might be the implication, I guess poor, sick people have a tendency to be more religious than those who dwell in sweet delight, right? But here is, I just love how Blake puts it. But does a human form display to those who dwell in realms of day? So we're not even talking about God appearing. This is what I think Blake means by this. So to those who dwell in day, in light, who are prosperous, who dwell in the light, who are born into wealth and in just a good life. Blake does not pose the question if God appears to these people. He asks, does a human form display to those who dwell in realms of day? So this is what I think he means by this. So to those who are well off, to those who don't have to worry about anything, to those who have all the money in the world, do they even see other human beings? Are they so self-absorbed, so narcissistic, so encased in their little bubble that they can't even go out of themselves to see other human beings, to notice them? We're not talking about God here. We're talking about just another person. So those who dwell in the realms of day, those who dwell in sweet delights, never mind that they cannot see God, that God does not appear to them, but not even a basic human form displays to them, right? Because they dwell in the realms of day, in the light, and they have no worries, right? So he puts it in such a, almost mischievous way. It's so beautiful, right? God appears and God is light to those poor souls who dwell in night. But does a human form display to those who dwell in realms of day? Right? And you can say this about politicians and the clergy as well, because they are well off. They live in the light, in sweet delight, right? They are well off. They have the advantages. They have the power, right? Does God display to them? Does God appear to them? And the most important question, can they even see a human form? Or are they blinded by their own, luxury, if you want to call it that, and, self-absorption? It's just beautiful. And when you keep on reading and reading and reading, and of course, these are not the complete poems, only a selection, but if you keep on reading, and you get a deeper feeling of who Blake was, what his character was, what kind of individual he was, you can really figure out why he was so hated by the establishment. I mean, they just couldn't stand this guy. And of course, for good reason, because he was on another level. He was on another level of consciousness, spirituality, even intellect, right? Gifted in every way except wealth and affluence. So I would say that if you were to read a poet and his work, if you do not know which one to pick up, I would suggest you try William Blake, and especially the poems that I've mentioned, Tiger, The Poison Tree, Allegories of Innocence, and there are plenty of others, but these are special to me, right? And of course, I don't vibe with the entirety of his works. Some of them are a bit too religious, too mythological, But anyway, right? William Blake, what a guy, unique, special in every way, and I love the fact that no matter what the tyrannical cliques of his time tried to do to keep him quiet, to make him go away, to push him around, to make fun of him, Blake never wavered. He was on a holy divine mission, right? And he never backed down. He took a break for a couple of years when he was in exile, but then he came back swinging, and he kept on creating his great works because he had visions. He thought that he was getting his inspiration from angels, from God, whispering in his ear. This guy had visions 24/7. Okay? He thought that he was on a holy crusade, and he thought that his art was the only weapon against, tyranny of every sorts, right? And I would say that almost 200 years later, after his death, William Blake is still strong. He has won against all of those, minuscule attempts to destroy him. Governments went away. Empires went away. Churches, religions, all sorts of movements and trends. They all went away. They all were forgotten. All relegated to a corner of dusty history. But William Blake, he still shines bright. He can still enlighten. He can still help the soul, the heart, the mind, right? And I forgot about this. Another obsession of his was the imagination. That without imagination, a human life is wasted. Your imagination has to take, front and center. Your imagination has to be king, right? A person without imagination can be easily tricked, can be easily manipulated, right? Imagination is key. But that's about it. If you want to support Jaboy, I got a few books of my own on Amazon. The link will be down below. The link will be down below. Thanks for watching. Keep on reading, and see ya.